welcome to Half the Battle, and welcome, my friends, to the 10th anniversary!
Holy crap, 10 years! I can hardly believe it myself. So, what could I possibly review on this special occasion?
Well, I had a choice between being an angel or a devil.
A positive review of a great toy, or a negative review of a very bad toy.
As you can clearly tell from the title of the video or the thumbnail, I chose violence.
Yes, today we'll be taking a look at Robo Joe. But this channel has always been about taking a look at the good things in G.I. Joe as well as the bad. So, to balance it out, next week the celebrations continue as I'll be reviewing one of my favorite G.I. Joe toys. Yes, my friends, the time will have finally come. 7 days from now, we'll be taking a look at the original His Tank.
But before I take you to heaven, I'm gonna take you to hell with today's review.
So meet Robo Joe. This figure was released in 1993 with some original body parts in all its orange glory. Yeah, I say some original parts because he does have recycled stuff from other figures. Something you'll find is kinda appropriate when we discuss the character. His head and torso are unique, but his legs and arms are shared with other Armor Tech figures.
Ah yes, I should probably explain for anybody out there who isn't familiar with the later years of the G.I. Joe line.
The Armor Tech line was comprised of action figures with beefy armor to fight in space. That's because Armor Tech was part of another G.I. Joe subline called Star Brigade, who were all about space. So this figure is part of a subline.
Yeah, parts of G.I. Joe got kinda dumb in the later years.
Anyway, Armor Tech explains why this figure looks the way it does. Well, the body construction, I mean. It doesn't explain the orange bits. At all. These are basically mech suits, but not in the cool way we'd get later.
The main drawback to this type of body construction is that we lose quite a bit of articulation.
There's no ball joint at the shoulders, so the upper arms only move up and down. There's no swivel joint at the elbows, so the lower arms only move up and down too. And there's no articulation at the waist, so the torso can't swivel. Oh, and no ball joint at the hips, so the legs can only move up and down. To compensate for this just a tiny bit, the figure does swivel at the wrist, so you can move his hands. That's cool and all, but doesn't make up for the lack of everything else.
Okay, it's time to talk about the color scheme.
It's black and bright orange. A lot of bright orange.
Why? No, seriously, why did they go with this?
None of the other Armor Tech figures look like this. They all have pretty cool colors, so I don't know what happened here. Also, it's not just the orange plastic. The black parts are covered in orange specks like a radioactive Garfield ejaculated on them. It looks hideous, and if you're not familiar with the figure, at first glance you'd assume it had paint damage.
Moving on.
The second most noticeable thing about Robo Joe next to the orange is the head. Okay, I think it's pretty clear where the inspiration for this look came from. Though personally, the first thing I thought of was the Borg. We'll get into why he looks like this when we get to the character. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the figure does have head articulation, but it can only move side to side and only a tiny bit at that. Also, it's very stiff to move, so I don't know why they even bothered.
Moving on once again.
There is one feature all Armor Tech figures have in common. Like most G.I. Joe figures, they have a screw hole in the back. But with Armor Tech, they are not for screwing.
Why yes, there probably was a better way to phrase that, but this channel has been about doing dick jokes about G.I. Joe for a decade now, so you knew what you signed up for when you clicked play.
My point is, there's a hole but no screw, so you can't take the figure apart that way. So, why the hell is it there? Well, with regular G.I. Joe figures, the hole has 3 functions. 2 intentional ones, and one that I think was just a happy coincidence. Namely, that it lets you easily take the figure apart if you need to replace the O-ring or want to make a custom figure. The 2 intended functions are A, that you can use it to secure a figure in a vehicle seat, since most of those have pegs specifically for that. But these beefy boys won't fit in most vehicles, so that's useless. And B, to plug in backpacks.
But guess what accessory none of the Armor Tech figures came with? A freaking backpack!
I mean, sure, you can give them backpacks from other figures, but most of them would just look stupid.
That does bring us to the accessories, another unpleasant subject when it comes to this figure.
Most of his weapons came on a weapon tree, as was the style at the time, so those aren't unique but reuses of old molds, like Muskrat's shotgun for example. Also, they were all gold for some goddamn reason, like Robo Joe is a long-lost son of Saddam Hussein or something. He also has a shoulder-mounted missile launcher, which would actually be pretty cool if it wasn't in that same damn bright orange. And lastly, he had a black helmet.
Ah yes, the helmet. I have notes.
There are a few design flaws to find here. For one thing, it's completely opaque. There's nothing to see out of. The other Armortech helmets had visors and stuff. I guess you could infer there's a display inside the helmet, but nothing on the packaging indicates that. For another thing, Armortech means bulky spacesuits.
To operate in space.
Now, one of the basic functions of a spacesuit, a fairly important one according to NASA, is that they should be airtight. This helmet does not seal. His neck, and depending on how you place the helmet, his chin, are exposed to the cold vacuum of space. Not the greatest idea if you want to keep your head unexploded. Some of the other Armortech figures, but not all, do have helmets that form a perfect seal, so Robo Joe has no excuse.
Overall, thanks, I hate it.
This may be the worst G.I. Joe figure they ever made. And I remind you that on this channel alone, we've looked at a guy that dresses like a bird, a neon monstrosity that would look too much for a rave, and a figure you might find in a lady's nightstand drawer. The orange is bad, the orange specs make it worse, the weapons are uninspired, and the lack of articulation is unfortunate. And I didn't even mention any of the detailing on the figure. He looks like he has pecs. Why does a mech suit have a six-pack?
Maybe we'll get an answer to this question and many more when we talk about the character, which will be directly.
Because this was the only toy Robo Joe ever got. There's nothing in the later toy lines, the Collectors Club wouldn't even touch it, and they remade practically everything, and he's certainly not in the cards for the Classifieds line. At least I hope not.
So that means it's time to talk about the character, which basically just means the file card.
Yeah, it may surprise you to learn that Robo Joe didn't appear in any of the cartoons or comics, not even the modern ones. Okay, he was on the cover of one issue that had every Joe ever made up until that point, but that hardly counts as anything more than a Where's Waldo cameo.
So that just leaves us with the packaging and the file cards, which does have a few things to tell.
The card art shows him being quite angry about something while firing the black pistol he didn't come with. Also, he isn't wearing his helmet, even though he appears to be in outer space. Maybe my complaining about the helmet was a mistake, since he can apparently breathe in space. Come to think of it, the helmet does remind me a little of Batman, who can also breathe in space, so that tracks. Also, the robot parts of his head are silver in the art, not gold, and take up a little more of his face. I guess some things got changed between prototyping, when most of the time the card art is made, and production.
Now, onto the card itself.
And let's start with the oh-so-original codename, Robo Joe.
Now where oh where could the inspiration for this have come from?
Well, if it wasn't painfully obvious already, the card has you covered with the military specializations. He is both specialized in criminal termination and outlaw incarceration.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in just those 4 words.
Termination is a Terminator reference, obviously, and the mention of criminals and outlaws alludes to RoboCop. So, Robo Joe here is the unholy orange love child of the Terminator and RoboCop. The look is from Arnie, the name is from Murphy. Which is kinda a weird pairing when you consider RoboCop is, well, a cop, the hint's in the name, and the most famous scene from Terminator, the one immediately preceded by the I'll be back line, has him waste an entire police station. This might be one of the reasons there was ever only one toy of this character, since he's a ripoff of 2 franchises that are very, very copyrighted.
Another reason being that the figure was butt ugly.
Regarding Robo Joe, these are some weird specializations, as the Joes are meant to fight Cobra, not capture outlaws or kill criminals. Also, terminating criminals isn't a job, you're supposed to capture them, but whatever. There's actually kind of an explanation for that, as Star Brigade wasn't just about G.I. Joe vs. Cobra in space, But they also fought aliens, because those sure were a great addition to the mythos. And those aliens were bounty hunters and criminals. Anyway, let's move on. His real name is Greg D. Scott, and here's where things get weird.
Okay, weirder.
Because he's not the only Greg Scott on the G.I. Joe team. In 2002, a Lifeline figure was released with that name. And note that the original Lifeline had a different name, so this is a separate character. The 2002 line was notorious for using the names of fans and Hasbro employees on the file card, though this happened in the original line too. Well, with Hasbro people anyway.
So I looked it up.
And there was a Greg Scott working at Hasbro from 1991 to 2004 as a creative design manager, so that fits. Meaning that as far as I could tell, this is the only guy at Hasbro that's had 2 G.I. Joe characters named after him. The funny thing is, I couldn't find any evidence on his LinkedIn page that he even worked on G.I. Joe. Maybe they gave him the Lifeline card as an apology for naming this horrible figure after him. Christ, we've been going on for ages and we haven't even gotten to the main body of the file card yet.
So let's find out what his deal is anyway.
Greg Scott was a brilliant scientist who was working in his lab late one night when his eyes beheld an eerie sight. He was the engineering genius working on the very armor tech that he's now wearing, when Destro raided his lab and fatally wounded him, leaving him a shattered shell of a man. Okay, Webster's defines fatally as in a manner resulting in death, so not sure how that works. Though to be fair, it also defines the term as resulting in ruin or beyond repair.
So there is some wiggle room there.
G.I. Joe scientists found him and repaired his broken body using the very technology he was working on. So unlike the other members of Armor Tech who just use the stuff as suits, his is integrated with his body and is non-removable.
So, does he still have a dick? How does he go to the toilet? These are important questions, people.
Now he's a part of the Star Brigade fighting for justice, though he is also after revenge on Destro. Not that he'd ever get it, because as I mentioned, he never appeared in other media. Lastly, he has a motto.
Serve the public trust. Protect the innocent. Uphold the law.
Sorry, wrong guy. I am stronger. I am faster. I am Robo Joe.
You sure are, buddy. You sure are.
Okay, so if I'm being honest, the character is actually pretty cool. Not completely original, or original at all, but cool.
Too bad his toy sucks so much ass.
I guess it does explain how he went from a brilliant engineer to a criminal Terminator. If most of my body was blown away and I was put in an orange hell shell, I'd be pretty pissed too. On another subject, I feel they missed a great opportunity here. I've talked about armor tech figures before, and one of my complaints of them is that some have a missile launcher for an arm, but that it leaves no place for the character's real arm to go. But since Robo Joe has been blown to bits, here there was a reason to have a big FU cannon instead of an arm, because it could work as an actual replacement. But guess what? Robo Joe is one of the armor tech figures that had 2 regular arms. Maybe they thought that having him have a severed arm would be a bit too gruesome? I don't know.
The basic premise of this character was tried again later, but for Cobra.
With the second character named Overkill, who was a cyborg too, but looked much better. Honestly, despite the absolute trashing I gave this figure, I actually wouldn't mind seeing it attempted again. A cyborg Joe would be cool. Just make sure he doesn't resemble this toy at all. And come up with a better name than Robo Joe for Pete's sake. And that was Robo Joe, part machine, all stupid.
Yeah, could you tell this wasn't my favorite figure? Ugh.
As promised, next week, to compensate and to continue the celebrations, I'll be taking a look at the original His Tank. But before you go, here's a few cool people talking about G.I. Joe and 10 years of Half the Battle.
Oh, hello everyone. Brian Hines here, formerly The Last Angry Geek. I just wanted to come on and wish Half the Battle a happy 10th anniversary. My God, 10 years of this. But I wanted to wish a very happy 10th anniversary to the host, a man I know very well. I know him by his real name, Timmy Timbuktu. That's the worst name I ever heard.
Hey, Timmy Tim Tim!
G.I. Joe. What do I know about G.I. Joe? Well, not much. G.I. Joe was one of the big franchises in the 80s when I was a kid, but I was more into Transformers. But there are things I like about G.I. Joe. There are some great things G.I. Joe did, and there are some bad things, but let's not talk about Cobra La right now. Things I liked about G.I. Joe. In the Rise of Cobra trailer, that moment where Sienna Miller is like taking off her wrap. Oh. In fact, let's watch that for a moment. Oh, anyway, Timmers, I want to wish you a happy 10th anniversary and to all the Atop the Fourth Wall audience. I mean, half the battle. Why do so many shows have fractions in their title? Let's watch that Sienna Miller thing a few more times. You have to go now.
Hey guys, this is Mike the Birdman from thisweekingeek.net, and I was asked to record something about G.I. Joe. And one of the things that I love talking about on my podcast is I love role-playing games. And recently, I learned that G.I. Joe actually did something with role-playing games. So this comes to us from Renegade Game Studios, which is the same company that put out the Power Rangers RPG that came out earlier this year. And I think this is friggin' fantastic. I mean, G.I. Joe has been one of those properties that I've always been a huge fan of. I've collected the toys for quite some time. I'm collecting some of the G.I. Joe declassified figures now. By the way, the Battle Android Trooper is a banger and is a fantastic figure in and of itself. Go buy it. But just having the ability to play this sort of military power fantasy is something else. And I think that's really something great for the franchise to be able to expand out into different forms of media. I mean, there's been video games, there's been movies, which have been different levels of successful, but here you're creating your own narrative experience. So whether you want to draw inspiration from the goofy ass cartoon, that's right, who doesn't want to, replay the old episode where Cobra starts a band called Cold Slither? Or if you want to delve into more of the stuff like from the more recent comic books, whether it be it from Devil's Due Publishing or IDW or even the Marvel Comics run, you can draw inspiration from that too. So you can create your own team of Joes. Or even if you want to play Cobra guys too. So if you want to take the fight to Destro, to Tomax and Zaymon, the Baroness, Cobra Commander himself, you can do that. And there's so many vehicles in here. There's like the Shark, the Night Raven, the Awe-Striker, the Vamp, the Ram. Like, there's a lot of vehicles in here that are like obviously fan favorites. Some stuff I didn't expect, and I'm really happy. So G.I. Joe is awesome. You should play this. Get your friends to play this with you. I gotta go because my Google's going off. Enjoy, guys.
Hey, Timmer. Kevin from Pegwarmers here. Congratulations on 10 years of doing half the battle. That is an impressive feat for anyone on the internet these days to produce that much quality content and doing all that you do for the G.I. Joe community. It's super impressive, and I'm really proud of you. And when do we get the face reveal? 10 years anniversary seems like the perfect time. All right, congratulations, and keep up the great work.
Haha, and welcome to a congratulations for half the battle. This is Shabu RU from Codename New to Vero 2. I wanted to extend the warmest wishes and congratulations to Timmer. Now, it's amazing because we all came in as fans of this iconic franchise, but what we got in return is priceless. And the fact that friendships that we've made, Timmer just inviting me in along with some other people that in this fraternity of G.I. Joe content creators. So Timmer, thank you for being the example, even though you're crazy, but you are crazy. So keep up the good work, and here's to another 10 years.
Hey, it's HCC788, and I'd like to give a hearty congratulations to Timmer for 10 years of Half the Battle. 10 years, that's amazing. I have enjoyed the show from the first moment I saw it, and it's been my privilege to work with you numerous times over the years. It's been a lot of fun What was my favorite moment of Half the Battle? I'd have to say it's the care package that I sent to you. It was at the start of the pandemic, and international mail wasn't really going anywhere. It took something like 6 months to get it to you. But you did get it. It included one of your Grail action figures, and I was really happy to get that for you. But I also sent you a few things that I thought you'd like. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. So again, congratulations, Timmer, and I look forward to another 10 years.
Well, I'll see you next time, and blah blah. I'm gonna go off script for a bit here because it's been 10 freaking years, people. I'm astonished that we got here and so very, very happy. It was so much fun these last 10 years, and well, here's to 10 more. I want to thank everybody who watches my stuff. Those that have been there from the beginning, or maybe this is your very first time watching me. Thank you so much for being here. You wouldn't think that a subject like G.I. Joe would have 10 years worth of content in it, but yeah, it does. And in fact, it does it for 10 more, believe me. Well, we'll see you next time, everybody. And hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing.